Thanks for taking a few minutes to watch this video preview. Thanks for taking a few minutes to watch these video directions. I want you to be able to use this with your students and get the best results. And part of that is knowing, what was I thinking when I created some of this? All right, so with this green intervention, if you've used or watched videos of any of the others, this one is a little bit different because we don't have all of the highlighting with our blue and our green. I do incorporate a little bit of that in some bits, but it is a little different. Our kids are, yes, working on decoding, but they're a little bit past all that arm tapping and pounding of the words. So with this, I start by me reading the story to my students. I think listening comprehension and being able to ensure that they can work on skills such as compare and contrast and other things are important. So I usually start off by reading, asking my students to color in the first smiley face. Then after that, I'll say, okay, meet me back at the top. This time, let's take turns. Maybe they're not ready to take turns. So maybe you read, and when you stop, they help you with that word, or they help stretch out that word, whatever it might be. Usually at this level, most of my students are ready to start taking turns reading. So they read one sentence at a time, and then we color in our second smiley face. And for my last reading, this is where I still bring in some of that word highlighting, but with a different purpose. So with students, they really need a purpose for reading. They need to know, while I'm reading, what am I looking for? What am I trying to find? Maybe I'm trying to find the way that Jane and Grace are the same or different. Maybe I am trying to find, what's the problem in the story? Or what I usually do at this point is I say, I want you, as you're reading, to highlight any words that you see with an A consonant E, because that's what we have been working on in the green level of our spelling intervention. So students will read, and as they come to words, there's grades, grade, grade is here a lot. It never fails. Kids will ask about this, and that's okay. We just make it a conversation. We just talk about it. Again, reader, they'll be like, oh, A and E. But is it A consonant E? Nope, it sure isn't. The title of this, and then we just share on the board. Usually what we do is I'll say, okay, somebody give me a word that you found, and let's see, is it an A consonant E or is it not? And so I might have two columns drawn on the board. Somebody will say Jane, and we'll think, okay, is there an A, a consonant, and an E? Oh, yes, it is. So we write it in that column. Then let's say somebody shares read or reading or reader, and I'll write it out and I'll say, does this have A consonant E? Oh, no, it doesn't. But, it does have the same letters. So we have to train our brain to really spot when we have an A consonant E, and so on. At week 1, it doesn't look as beautiful as it does even by like week 5, but my kids get very, very good at starting to problem solve their own things. For example, whenever we do magic E with the E sound, like E consonant E, words like that will pop up. But is that E saying its name? No. Or words like have always pop up. It does look like it has a magic E, but that A isn't saying its name. And so then we can talk about, there will be some words where, words in English don't end in V. So that's why that E is there. It has a different job besides to make that A say its name. So it's just a great way to have some good conversations with students. And then we color in that last smiley face. Then I'll tell my students, meet me at number 1 with a pencil, and usually count backwards from 5. And then I read, they color in the answers. We talk a lot about, especially in week 1, I don't want you to tell me it's A. I don't want you to tell me it's B. I want you to color it in because I'm looking to see, does this student know Oh, does that student know? Ooh, they did not know. And we need to talk about it. Who is looking back? Like some kids, they know those right away. They hear it and they're like, this is easy, it's B. Ooh, this is easy, it's C. They know it. Others have to look back, but they do have the skill set to look back and find that. Those are all observations that as a teacher, I want to know. So we talk about what I'm looking for. And there's no right or wrong. If you if you have to look back, great. If you don't, great. Are you clueless? Great. We got to work on that. Okay, then we talk about compare and contrast. And instead of lots of cutesy pictures, this time I've used more graphic organizers to really help students get their thinking from their brain to paper, or even to spark some of that thinking. So with this, sometimes I left these blank. Sometimes I filled them in. Usually I filled them in when, like for example, one of these books has different kinds of sharks. So like a great white shark is maybe day 1, day 2 might be a whale shark, day 3 might be a tiger shark. And then I ask you to compare and contrast. Which ones are you doing? You don't know unless I tell you. Here, I think it's pretty obvious that we are comparing Jane and Grace. But feel free to change that. If you don't want to compare that and you want to compare something else, go for it. But we are going to compare Jane and Grace. And we can talk through, well, what did they both have? How were they different? All of those kinds of things. And with this, you can have your students write this, or you could be the writer and they're just sharing out answers. That is totally up to you, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you feel is best for your kids. All right, so this will be the same day in and day out. But then whenever we come over here, now we have a sentence that is all mixed up. So students can find that first word. They know capital letters go at the beginning. Usually when I read this, I say, in grade, a bad reading she had. Oh, that sounds so mixed up. What if we said she had a bad grade in reading with a period at the end? So that is something then that you can do. Let your students start. If they're struggling, give them a little help. If not, let them work on sentences that make sense, that the word order sounds like it should and is very fluid. Capital letters, periods, nice spaces, all of that. Then we have homographs, where words have the same written word, but they mean different things. And so with this, usually we have one version that is a noun and one version that is a verb. That is not all the time. There are definitely versions where we have 2 nouns or 2 verbs. With this, I'm going to go with the word grade just because it's down here. So you could get on your paper, you could get an A+. That is your grade. That is a noun. Grade. I got a good grade on my paper. But also as a teacher, I know that sometimes I have to sit at my desk and grade papers. Ugh. Let's say we have some stacks of paper here, and I might look like this if I'm grading papers. Okay, so that is something that I do. I grade papers. You get a grade on your paper. One is a noun, one is a verb, and they have different meanings depending on how we're using them in the sentence. Speaking of grades, then that is also a vocabulary word. If you want to use the same word, that's great if it happens to be a multiple meaning word. If it doesn't or if it isn't, then that's okay. Choose something else from the text, or I have a list of common multiple meaning words that you can use, whatever works best. All right, so then moving on to a Frayer model, which is a research-based strategy to help students with vocabulary words. You can use these cards. I plan to laminate these. Lamination does not film well, so I haven't laminated these yet. But with this, you can show the card with a picture, the word. We have a definition, we have synonyms. And so they can either copy from the card, maybe you write it on your paper, maybe you have them look it up, whatever works for you. But using the Frayer model, they can write the definition, write synonyms, draw a picture, and again, they can copy this exact picture. They could come up with something of their own. There are no rules there. That's up to you. And then antonyms, in my mind, antonyms are something that then you talk about afterwards. So if we have, it's a score or a skill, what would the opposite be then of a grade? Maybe the opposite is like your teacher puts a check mark on it. Maybe it goes in the trash. All of those can be things that you discuss with your students. All right, again, day 2, this side will be the same. You choose how much or how little writing you want your students to do. And then we have a sentence with 3 mistakes. So usually I read it to them, give them a few minutes of think time to see if they can find the 3 mistakes. Now, full disclosure, in theory, they would have time to write that sentence and correct the mistakes. If you're running short on time, that's the first thing that I scrap, to be honest. We look and we see, well, can we find them? We talk about them and then we move on. Because sometimes that writing piece for some of our students really slows them down and it takes a long time. All right, now we have the word swap. So again, you can use the vocabulary card if you wish. And with this is a semantic map. And with a semantic map, it's kind of like a brain dump. You are just activating prior knowledge and seeing what students know. So you can read this to them to exchange one thing for another. Well, you know what I think of? At lunch, sometimes kids like to swap what they brought for lunch or what's on the tray. I really like broccoli. You don't. Can I have your broccoli? You can have my fruit, whatever that might be. You can write synonyms like trade or switch. You could have other examples, like to me, I think Pokemon cards are something that kids trade or switch or swap. Even this word here, exchange. Any of those things. You are just brain dumping anything and everything that your kids are saying, whether it is a definition, a synonym, an example like Pokemon cards or lunch. Get it on paper, because maybe a student doesn't resonate with the word swap. Maybe that's something that they haven't heard, but they do know switch, or they do know trade, or hey, they've definitely traded some Pokemon cards, or whatever that happens to be. Okay, next up is our endings. And with these endings, we have lots of them that will rotate through, but here we have the ending S. And we want to put S on the end of a word. So with this, you can have them use words that are in the text. You can have them come up with whatever words they want. Maybe you have a student who uses the same word week in and week out when it applies, That's up to you. But with this, I might see, here's the word name, which would be names whenever we ask, or whenever we add that S. I also see paper, desk could be desks, grade could be grades, idea could be ideas. Let's see. That's about all I see, at least in the moment on the spot. We could have verbs, but then it wouldn't mean more than one. It would mean in the present tense. You can get really specific about that with your students or not. It doesn't matter. Even like with trade could be, would be a verb, meaning it may not really fit this criteria, But what do you want? How specific do you want to get? Even the same with cheat. To cheat could be cheats. As a student, I usually have my students just write this one word. But as a teacher, I might write some of the words that students are sharing. Like desk could be desks. Paper could be papers. Name could be names. Bathroom. Ooh. Bathroom could be bathrooms. So I kind of create a list based on what students are sharing or whatever I notice. And then if there is a student who's struggling, they could always copy from what I have here. All right, now we have let's go. And we are going to try to expand this sentence. So with expand the sentence, what I like to do is get a Post-it note and just write down the things that my students are saying. So let's go to the park. Let's go, from the story it says, for ice cream. Let's go buy our mailboxes. Whew. What if we said, let's go quickly? All of these are things that students could share. You write them down, and then when it's their turn to write, they can pick and choose what makes sense. Let's go quickly to the park. Let's quickly go for ice cream. They can use as much or as little as they want. To me, this is something that is just kind of naturally differentiating. It's something that they get to write what comes to their mind or what makes sense to them. But at the same time, you have a word bank. So if students are struggling, then they can have a reference there. Okay, so next up is scaling vocabulary words. And I've said it in other videos that I've made here. This is probably one of my most favorite activities that I've been doing with my students. And this is scaling vocabulary words. I want you to think of like shades of meaning. A lot of people use paint strips. We're kind of creating our own paint strip here. So with this, we are going to come up with a couple of words. So I am thinking her mom is excited for her. That's going to be up here. But maybe her mom is also disappointed in her. Whew, I should have started writing a little smaller. So I'm going to put one at the top, one at the bottom. And then the students and I are just going together start brainstorming other words that mean something like excited, something like disappointed, or somewhere in between. So maybe I come up with the word happy. Maybe thrilled. Maybe instead of like disappointed, maybe just sad. Maybe we go with a word like glad. Or, excited, thrilled, happy, glad. Ooh, I'm even thinking maybe surprised is too far off. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so we have 6 words here, and we need to put what is like the most intense, the highest meaning, or most excited, most extreme, to then least extreme, or kind of one extreme or the other. So with this, I might say, I think actually instead of excited, thrilled is kind of like a stronger meaning. Maybe I want to go with thrilled and then excited. And then, I could also be happy and glad. And again, your kids can be having discussions about this. So what if another student then says, well, I think glad is better than happy. Give me a situation. You might be happy that it's your birthday. You might be glad that you get to go to your favorite restaurant, but like, which is more extreme? Which is better? Which is more exciting? Have those discussions. Have your students come up with examples of when you might be happy or when you might be glad or thrilled or excited or whatever. And so then, which is kind of more extreme or least? Disappointed, sad, where do these go? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's all about kind of the discussion. Let your kids see that these are opposites of each other. Mom was feeling excited, so she's somewhere up here in this, ooh, I'm feeling so happy, so thrilled, so excited, maybe even ecstatic. All of those are words that describe how mom is feeling. She's not feeling the opposite. She is not feeling disappointed or sad. She's, ooh, look up here. She's so excited. And so then on this part right here, you could have your students write all of the words. You could have them just write a couple of the words. You could have them write the top and the bottom. Whatever works for you. To me, my kids oftentimes, I shouldn't say all of them, some of them are very slow writers. So if this is going to slow down kind of the flow or the groove, don't waste the time. Move on to things that are more beneficial. Like to me, this writing is more beneficial. This writing is more beneficial. Here, I think a lot of it was covered in the discussion. Use your best judgment. This is also an area that maybe you don't want to use words from this story. Maybe if you're trying to incorporate words from their general education classroom, maybe you throw them in there. That's up to you. That's really the reason why it's blank, because I wanted to give you the words, but I also felt that was more limiting. I've had such amazing conversations with my students as we come up with a word. Or sometimes when we're ordering, somebody throws out another word and I'm like, oh, we got to put that on the Post-it note. That's a good one. So there are no right or wrong answers. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Use your best judgment. So next we have a compound word. We have the word grade book. I say that out loud and say, okay, circle the two words in grade book. So they'll grade book. They can circle, they could draw a line, you could use two different colors. That's really up to you. And again, what kind of time resources you have available to you. Okay, how did they celebrate Jane's good grade? So we already know that they're going to go for ice cream, but we can't just say go for ice cream. That's not a third grade sentence. That's not a second grade sentence, whatever or a second grade answer. You might want to say, we need to make it a complete sentence. We need to steal some of these words. And to do that, I always talk about crossing out those question words. Ooh, I don't need how, I don't need do. Those are question words. So I could say, they celebrate Jane's good grade. And then I might have to come up with my own words here for transition. By going for ice cream. And a period at the end. So we've used these words. We didn't need those question words. And we wrote a complete sentence. All right, next up, same thing on the left, but on the right, we have two sentences that we need to combine. So I always have my students start by underlining, highlighting, circling something, the words that are the same. So Grace was afraid, Jane was afraid. Both of those was afraid is the same in each sentence. So I might say Grace and Jane. And now, was afraid. Grace and Jane was afraid. We're going to have to change that verb. Were afraid to incorporate a plural. Grace and Jane were afraid. We have successfully combined those two sentences. Over here, I totally just glossed over the fluency. Both are exactly the same, so we'll talk about it here. So with this, usually for this reading level, I set my timer for 60 seconds. If that's too much, you could always back it up to 45 seconds. But early on in the year, like this week 1 phase, a lot of my kids, 60 seconds, they're not really finishing it, but they are feeling very proud of themselves because they're making it into the second paragraph. So with this, you'll set the timer, they'll read, and then they'll mark their spot, and you'll see how many words did they read. Well, this whole line gave me 46. I missed one word there, didn't get it. 45 words. Set it again. How far did they get? And write down their word. If they've been with you for a few years, they might already know how to do this, which makes it even better. 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58 words. I always talk about, I don't care what this number is, I care, did you grow? Did you get better as you went along? All right, next up, we have a features chart where we have, really, these change over and over, and that's the beauty of it, is that we get to talk about lots of different words. So with this, we have Grace and Jane at the top. Sometimes this will be where some of your vocabulary words are, and then maybe other characters or other examples down the side. It'll look different each time. But here we have some words like smart, dishonest, proud, scared, sneaky. And we check who fits that criteria. So for smart, we know Jane was smart. She was getting straight A's, Grace not so much. But another student at your table might say, well, you know what? I think Grace is kind of smart because you know what? She concocted this whole idea to swap their papers so that she could get a good grade. But then somebody else might say, well, is it really smart? Because she does seem to get caught, they're going to tell the teacher the next day. So is that really smart? Like, did she make a good decision? There's no right or wrong answer. Just have the discussions. Is she, what is an example of smart? Is it what Grace did, what Jane did, maybe both of them? Who's dishonest? Well, I think Grace was dishonest. Who was proud? Grace was pretty proud of herself when she got her good grade and they went for ice cream, but then, oops, that feeling in her stomach, oh, maybe not. And you know what? At the end, whenever Jane realized what was happening, I think Jane was probably pretty proud of herself too. So your students don't have to check both. Maybe they only check one. Maybe you tell them, but which one is a better example of proud? In which case then they can only make one check, which is a better example of smart. That's up to you and your students. And again, it's about the conversation, the oral discourse with your kids. Who is scared? At some point, I kind of think they were both scared. I think Jane was very scared when she saw that poor grade on her paper. But Grace was pretty scared whenever her mom's taking her out for ice cream and she has this weird feeling. I think some of that was fear, guilt. So again, no right or wrong answer. That's up to you. Sneaky, we think it's Grace. You could maybe even talk about dishonest and sneaky. Those were kind of going hand in hand there. Okay, so this is, again, a very favorite activity because of the conversations that happen. So allow the conversations. I don't care where those X's end up, just have the conversations. All right, so next we have words with the same sound but different spellings. So we're going to come over here and choose a word. But if you're like, Amanda, on the spot, I can't do that or whatever, that's okay. I also have a list of words that are homophones, that have different spellings, but same meaning. With this one, what I'm getting is this word to that's coming to me, like, oh, maybe we could do that. We also have way, that's a multiple meaning word. 8 is a multiple meaning word. Lots of different things that are here when we're kind of looking for that specifically. So, I'm going to go with this word way. So I know on a road, I need to know which way to go. Kind of looks like a tree. I need to know which way to go. But I also know that when I go to the doctor, They are going to weigh me to see if I've gained weight. Yes. They're going to weigh me. So these words, when you hear them, they sound exactly the same, but the way they're written is totally different. And so this is something, especially in this green level, where maybe you've talked about an AY, but not so much this. Or, hey guys, we're going to get to words that end in AY. This is the most common. But we're also going to talk about words like this, which is less common, but is still another way. And you have to know what version of that word I need. Depending on the context, will tell me, do I need to spell it this way? Or am I going to the doctor and I'm going to get weighed? Either way, those are things that we need to have conversations about with our students. So I hope this helps you get started with the green level of the reading intervention. But as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.